Spoiler alert! There you go. If you have not seen Star Trek Into Darkness, and you are planning on seeing Star Trek Into Darkness, then you do not watch this video, because it will ruin the movie for you, because I am going to be giving away pretty much all of the spoilers. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So if you have not seen Star Trek Into Darkness, leave now or forever hold your peace. Amen. So with that said, let's get into Star Trek Into Darkness. Now overall, pretty much my personal thoughts on it, I loved it. I thought it was great. I don't know about you, but I loved it. I thought it was amazing and awesome. The action was great. The story was pretty good. The effects were amazing. The cast overall was awesome. Chris Pine, again, is great. Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana, Simon Pegg, Carl Urban, just pretty much everyone all over the map, all over the board is fucking amazing. Pretty much there you go. Now, I had pretty much one minor problem with this. And again, this is a big spoiler. My problem isn't the villain. Khan is pretty much our main villain. And he's played by Benedict Cumberbatch. You'll learn this later in the movie. And I loved that they used Khan. I was so happy because in the first Star Trek movie from 2009, not the first Star Trek movie, but you know what I'm saying. The villain was alright. He wasn't really all that memorable. And he just was kind of like your cliched, you killed, like, my family's dead, I'm going to take it out on you kind of villain, which I think is, a little bit cliched. This villain was a huge step up from that. The villain was just perfect, pretty much perfect. Benedict Cumberbatch plays Khan, and he couldn't have done a better job if he tried. He pretty much brings his all in this. And I said that, the whole cast, Star Trek Into Darkness was great. He pretty much was the best person, the best actor in this whole movie. His performance is pretty much just as good, if not a little bit better, than the Joker in The Dark Knight. Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight. I dare say that. I said it. It is just that good, or maybe even better. He's just that menacing, he is just that good, and he's probably like one of the best, if not the best actor working today, and he does a great job as Khan. He is amazing in this movie. I pretty much had to tell you guys that, not only because that's pretty much what everyone else is talking about, but it kind of falls into where my main problem with the movie. I do have some other minor little nitpicky kind of problems, which I'll get into later, but my main problem with Star Trek Into Darkness, and I'm trying to think how to word this, and that's probably why you're going to hear me say it a couple more times in a minute, but my main problem with Star Trek Into Darkness is that it pretty much is just a huge fan service / this is what we all love from Star Trek kind of movie. And the thing that pisses me off about that is that in the first Star Trek movie from 2009, that's why I liked it a lot, because it didn't rely on, hey, let's throw this in here because everyone remembers that from Star Trek. It didn't rely on that. Sure, it had a few, little stuff from the original show that was, put in there because, hey, we have to have a few little Easter eggs. And I thought it had the perfect blend of that. Like, it was its own original story, but it could also have, like, a minor, a couple of minor little, Easter eggs in there. Like, Nurse Chapel was mentioned in the background, or Sulu, is fighting with a sword, or Leonard Nimoy's cameo in it, or, just a bunch of other stuff in there. I thought it had the perfect little blend of, or the Klingon, Birds of Prey thing and the Kobayashi Maru test. I thought it had a perfect little blend of Star Trek, previous Star Trek lore with new, original, and fun Star Trek movie. Here, it pretty much just said, well, you know what, we didn't have a lot of that in the first movie. Let's go ahead and put that shit on overdrive in this movie. Because it pretty much relies on just a bunch of, like, old throwbacks to Star Trek. And that really bothered me. Because the reason why I like the first movie a lot, again, is that it was its own original story. It didn't rely on other Star Trek stuff to make it good. It relied on its own, restart of the franchise. And it relied on its own, it relied pretty much on its own new source, new material instead of old source material. Here they pretty much just said, well, our villain's Khan, so let's throw this in from Wrath of Khan, and let's throw this in from Wrath of Khan, because people love Wrath of Khan because of that, right? So we gotta have that in this movie. Like, for example, someone dying from the Warp Core, which I like that they switched around the characters, and I'll go into that in a minute. But, or for example, someone screams Khan, which, yeah, I liked it, but, like, I pretty much everything from Wrath of Khan I liked, but at the same time I didn't like, because the first movie I liked because it relied on its own originality to be good. Here it relied on a past movie to be good, and I really didn't like that. Especially when the beginning pretty much was setting up its own story and saying it just could have been just a straight up remake from Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, but they really wanted to make their own original story here, using elements of previous stuff with Khan, such as Space Seed. This is more of a remake of Space Seed than it is Wrath of Khan, but there is still a shit ton of stuff from Wrath of Khan in this, such as Carol Marcus, who, in this movie, I really didn't like because she really had no purpose in here. She really just seemed to be in the movie because set up for a later movie, which I don't think is going to happen because J.J. Abrams is now doing Star Wars, so it's kind of a big mess up. So, like from Wrath of Khan, you have Carol Marcus. From Wrath of Khan, you have someone dying of the Warp Core, the whole radiation leak. From Wrath of Khan, you have someone screaming, well, Khan. From, or even from Space Seed, the Botany Bay, and people, being in cryogenic sleep. It really just relied heavily on stuff from Star Trek, and not even, like, from Wrath of Khan or Space Seed, but even from, like, the original show, like, well, we have to have Leonard Nimoy in there, because, well, he was in the last movie, so we have to have him in here. Oh, by the way, Leonard Nimoy's cameo in this movie had no purpose, like, at all. Like, at all. Like, he literally... That could have been a cameo by anybody, and it didn't even matter. Like, for one of the first movie, it added to the plot, and it actually was a huge, giant, big plot point. It actually explained where this movie's timeline took place. It's a completely different alternate timeline where similar stuff happens, but, where similar stuff happens, but it's not exactly the same. Here, he pretty much is just here to say, oh yeah, we fought Khan once. Do you need anything else? Like, that's the cameo right there. And I did a really bad Leonard Nimoy impression, but that's the whole cameo right there. That's the only reason why he's in this movie, just to pretty much say, yeah, we fought Khan once, and it was, like, a big, but at a cost. Which, I like that they kind of set up that, oh, man, is Spock gonna die? Well, he did in Wrath of Khan, so, that's, so he has to die here, but then it's Kirk that actually died. But I just didn't really like the fact that the movie just relied on past Star Trek stuff to pretty much... I didn't like that at all. It just relied on Space Seed and Wrath of Khan and even stuff just from miscellaneous Star Trek and just miscellaneous Star Trek stuff. Like, even like a Tribble. Tribble's in this movie. Everyone knows what a Tribble is. Even one guy in the theater I saw this movie in, he was like, oh yeah, look, a Tribble. I remember that from Star Trek. Okay, he didn't exactly say that, but he was just like, oh yeah, Tribble. Yeah. Like, just, like, miscellaneous stuff that made Star Trek, big and famous is put in this movie, and I really didn't like that, because the first movie relied on its own originality, not the originality from the original series. I didn't really like that. That's, like, a big thing that everyone hated about the Star Wars prequels. They hated that because they just relied on the old movies instead of originality. Here, I didn't like that. Like, now, here's the thing. I liked it, but I didn't like it. I pretty much loved everything that they did from Wrath of Khan, pretty much. Khan, for one, was awesome in this movie. I love that they switched around the characters dying. Like, in Wrath of Khan, it was Spock that died, and not Kirk. In this movie, it's Kirk that died, and not Spock. And I like that because, in this movie, it makes sense. Because in the beginning, it looks like Spock's gonna die. And, he doesn't care that he's gonna die. But, later in the movie when Kirk dies, he, is sad and stuff like that. And now he understands that it's not really his... I don't know how to explain this. Let me think. In the beginning of the movie, Spock pretty much is about to die. He's in the volcano. And he's pretty much like, well, I'm gonna have to sacrifice myself because it's the Prime Directive. And we just have to do that. We can't... pretty much we can't, show ourselves to the indigenous people. It's Prime Directive. And then he's saved, but they break the Prime Directive. And he's just like, I would have died because it would have, meant that we follow the Prime Directive and, stuff like that. And then, and then Kirk dies and he's all sad. And it's like, well, he's sad, he's all sad. And it really, he doesn't understand that Spock doesn't understand until the end when Kirk dies that it would have hurt the people that loved Spock, like Uhura and, Kirk, his best friend. He doesn't really care about what they think. It's all that he thinks, and he doesn't really care that they'll be hurt when he's dead. He doesn't really care that they'll be, sad when he's gone, stuff like that. That's really good, and that really added to, his whole arc that he has to pretty much break rules from time to time. And that is great, because in the movie, Kirk gets, in trouble, and he gets completely, pretty much demoted from captain to first admiral, admiral, I guess. And because, he broke some rules because Spock, ratted him out. But then later Spock has to learn that he has to break some rules sometimes when he goes and kicks Khan's ass, which is awesome. He just, breaks loose. He screams Khan. Which, yeah, many people might say that's kind of a cop-out and that's kind of dumb and stuff like that, but I personally loved it. I loved that, pretty much everything that they did from Wrath of Khan here, I liked, but I didn't like that they had to rely on stuff from Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, to make this movie really good. But then again, you probably would have had some people bitch that, oh, well, if you're doing Wrath of Khan, then why didn't you just take some stuff from Wrath of Khan? I guess maybe that's it, but still, I would have liked them to rely on their own originality and to do that, But I still, overall, really, really liked the movie. If you didn't like the movie, then, whatever, but I overall really liked the movie. And I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. There were, a few other little minor nitpicky things. Like, for one... Actually, hold on. Carol Marcus is in the movie. She's played by, Alice Eve, who's super hot in this movie. And again, I didn't really like her character all that much in this movie because she didn't really have a big purpose in being in the movie other than... She just felt set up for, a later movie, which I didn't really like all that much. But, isn't it weird that she's British, but her dad's in the movie and he's not British? Oh, by the way, that's another thing. Peter Weller is in the movie, which I mentioned in my Star Trek 2009 review, that Peter Weller, he played RoboCop in, I think, at least one of the RoboCop movies from, RoboCop. And he also plays Batman in both Batman, The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and Part 2. So pretty much throughout the movie, I was referring to him as Captain, or just Admiral RoboCop Batman instead of Admiral Marcus. That kind of confused a lot of people, but I don't care. I got the joke. He was awesome in the movie. He actually turns out to be one of our villains in the movies. And you know what, Iron Man 3? Take a page from Star Trek Into Darkness, because that's how you do a villain. You either have the villain that you market be your villain, or you have two villains and make them both awesome. That's a good idea, isn't it? But he was an awesome villain. He has an awesome voice, too. It's just a fucking badass voice. And Khan was also just pretty much the icing on the cake. He was one of the best villains ever. Probably my top 5, all-time favorite villains. Not only his performance, but just Khan in of itself. Ricardo Montalban's, performance in Space Seed and in Wrath of Khan. Brilliant. Fucking just brilliant in, Space Seed and in Wrath of Khan. Benedict Cumberbatch's performance here is awesome. I really hope that he shows up, later in the movie, because he's not dead. He's just frozen. He can come back pretty much any other time. One of my other minor little nitpicks is that how did they get Kirk out of the warp core without any other radiation leaks? He died because he had to stay in there or else the radiation would have leaked out and killed pretty much everybody. So how'd they get him out to basically take Khan's blood and, heal him with that? Because he's superhuman and Khan's blood can heal people. I didn't understand that. And why did they need Khan to... Why did they only need Khan's blood? Like, weren't there, 72 other people on the ship that had the same blood as Khan's? That they could have just taken the blood from one of those other 72 people and injected Kirk with it? Like, why did they just need Khan's? They could have just woken up some other guy, took his blood and, put it in Kirk. Why did they just need specifically Khan? And why at the end did Khan pretty much why did Khan at the end actually start to get knocked out from, Spock's punches and Uhura's, blaster or phaser? Like pretty much all my problems started to stem towards the end, which pretty much everyone says. Like, all of the Wrath of Khan references, all of the, references to, other Star Trek stuff. That's pretty much where all my problems stemmed from, which everyone is saying. So I don't think it comes as a big surprise that I had that same problem too. All the plot holes, all the little minor nitpicky parts, and all of the unoriginality just sort of came from the ending. And the ending is probably where most fans will probably have their, panties in a bunch. And I personally didn't really like the ending all that much. I thought the movie wrapped up way too fast. Like, it's way too fast. Like they didn't even, like Spock just, punches him. Like, how did they get him knocked out? Like, I thought he couldn't be knocked out. How did they get Khan knocked out? How did they get, Uhura beams down, she's just like, you can't kill Khan because we need his blood for Kirk, which doesn't make sense for two reasons. One, how did, he can't kill him, and two, even if he does kill him, he still has blood. And then Spock just punches him one more time, and then the screen cuts to black, and I guess that means he got knocked out. But how can he be knocked out? Kirk punched him a bunch of times before, he didn't get knocked out, and then Kirk is just sitting there, he's alive, he's fine, and then space is the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Star Trek, the Starship Enterprise. It wrapped up way too fast. I think it should have slowed down a little bit. It wrapped up way too damn fast. And I thought the ending battle between Kirk and Spock and Khan, I thought that went by a little bit, not too fast, just, too fast. I think it just, went on way too fast, and there was just a quick wrap up, just okay, we had this huge giant, epic fight, and then, space, the final frontier. It just went by way too fast, in my opinion. But overall, I still really liked the movie. All the acting, pretty much the acting all over the board was perfect. This is the perfect cast of characters, pretty much. Even Simon Pegg, Scotty, got a lot more to do in this. He kind of had his own little side quest in it. But I overall loved Star Trek Into Darkness. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 stars. Treks. But I overall loved it, and if you didn't like it, then I'm sorry about that. But I overall really love Star Trek Into Darkness. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. And I hope for the best for the future of the Star Trek franchise. I hope it doesn't get Brett Ratner and, kind of like X-Men 3. I really hope it doesn't get Brett Ratner or something like that. But I overall really loved it. It's probably my favorite movie of the summer so far, or probably of the year so far, with Iron Man as a close second. But I overall really, really loved Star Trek Into Darkness, 9 out of 10. Bruce Greenwood was also in it, and he also played Batman and a couple other animated stuff. That was cool. They both end up dying. That's kind of weird. But I overall really, really loved Star Trek Into Darkness, and I'm probably going to end this video right now because I keep on saying overall. But I love Star Trek Into Darkness. I thought it was great. 9 out of 10. So check it out if you want to. Don't go see it in 3D because 3D is bullshit. I want 2-3 movies roll. I'll see you soon. And Super Month is coming up, so I'm really excited about that. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. See you.